It's not very often that I get excited about new Windows features, but Windows Terminal, that has me excited. Being an old school guy, I learned on the command line, where you would actually have to type in the command instead of using the graphical user interface. So for me, I've always used the command prompt, I've always used PowerShell since it first came out, and occasionally I like to use Linux commands. Finally, Windows Terminal has come of age. It was introduced a couple of years back, but it wasn't quite fine-tuned yet. The new version, man, this thing is great. But before we start, I have to show you something because most people will customize Windows Terminal because it is an interface where you can access all of your prompts. And when you customize it, you can potentially mess things up. So where does Windows Terminal store all of its customizations? I'll show you here. This is the location. I'll paste it down below in the notes so that you actually have the full path. And here are the files. It uses a settings.json or JSON. There's two pronunciations, but the actual pronunciation from what I understand is JSON, as in the name Jason. And all that is a new JavaScript object notation file, which is very easy to work with. So the settings.json and the state.json, you can actually come in here and delete those two files. When you relaunch Windows Terminal, it's going to recreate them and start from scratch. As you can see, I've got a couple here that are Z underscore, or for those American folks, Z underscore. Those two files are the ones that I've customized because I've been working with this for quite a while. And I leave those there so that when I'm done with this YouTube video, I'm going to put my own settings back in place. But let's start. So now that we've deleted everything, or if you've made a mistake with your Windows Terminal and you want to reset it, that's where you would go. To run Windows Terminal, right-click on your Start menu, and you've got Windows Terminal there and Windows Terminal Admin. Honestly speaking, I would 99% of the time, I would run Command Prompt, PowerShell, Linux commands, all using the admin prompt. You can right-click on your desktop now as well, and they've got Open in Windows Terminal, but this is not an admin prompt. You can also click on your Start and begin by typing Terminal, and there you have your Windows Terminal app. When you click on it, it's run as a regular user, but if you right-click, you have the option to run as administrator. So let's run this as an administrator. And you can see as soon as you're in as administrator, in the top left corner here, it says administrator : and whatever page you are in. So this is the basic view of Windows Terminal when you first open it up where nothing's been customized. You can just click on the X here. Now this, if you close this down, it is going to write into one of those JSON files that you've closed the prompt that always comes up to say, set this as your default. I would very strongly recommend, see this option right here, it says install the latest PowerShell for the new features. The current version, if you run a PowerShell command, and there's the command, you will see that we're currently running version 5.1. This particular version right here, get it right away because this is version 7. And version 7, yes, it finally introduces Unicode and UTF-8 Characters, which is emojis. So you can actually program PowerShell files with emoji responses now, which is great if you're like me and you just like these little idiosyncrasies to lighten up people's days. But anyway, first thing is, click on that link, and you can press Control and click, and that will automatically open it up in your browser as it has right here. So just scroll down this list here and you can see it's got installing PowerShell 7. I usually get the MSI package because it's just easier to install. Now you've got the 64-bit and the 32-bit. Being a 64-bit operating system, that's the one that I would download. So download the file. Once it's downloaded, we're just going to run it. Give it a second here just to install. And there it goes. So next. Honestly, all of these options, you can certainly go through these and change them as you want, but I normally just go next and install, and away we go. While that's installing, if you notice here, you've got a drop down. Here are the default command prompts or programs, shells that Windows has detected when it installed. So it automatically does the command prompt, the Azure Cloud Shell, and the Windows PowerShell. So once you've installed this version, which is version 7, and we close out our terminal prompt, and let's run it again. Windows 11 now automatically adds any new shells that you've installed. So as you can see now, we have a new PowerShell in the list here. And if we run that same command that we did earlier, which is $PSVersionTable.PSVersion, you'll see it's major version 7, minor version 2. So this one is version 7.2. Here's another thing. I mentioned in a previous video that I usually go in, before I do a video, I program the PowerShell responses, previous versions, so that I don't have to waste time typing them on the screen and making mistakes going back and forth. Those files are all located in this location. So it's, actually, let me just remove the console.txt. Okay, so there's our location in AppData, Microsoft, Windows, PowerShell, PSReadLine. There's a file in here called console_host_history.txt. If you have a look at this, these are all the previous commands that you've typed in PowerShell. Now, if I keep on typing commands, this file is going to grow, and every line that I type is going to be in here. So if you want to go back and see what you previously typed, this is the file that you want to do it. Some of the commands I'm going to be typing and showing you, I'm going to just overwrite this right now, and those are the commands that I'm going to be showing you in a second here. So we'll save that. Close this window down. Here's where this gets really exciting. We've got the different versions of PowerShell. We've also got command prompt, which is our normal regular command prompt. As you can see, because we started off in administrator, all of the windows are opening up in administrator mode, which is exactly what I want. Here's the great thing about this new version of Windows Terminal. When you click on the download, the little arrow to the right of your open windows, you've got the different shells that are currently installed on your computer. And yes, you can go in here and customize these. You can actually add more. You can add more shells, such as various versions of Ubuntu, Linux, so on and so forth. And I'll get into that in a second here. Here we have the command palette. So if you're not sure what command to type or what does things, you can go through this list, and when you click on these, it's going to actually perform that particular command. And here's the shortcut. So if you do that one, there we go. We've opened up a new window of Windows Terminal. The main thing that people deal with in here is the settings file. This is where everything comes to life. I love the way Microsoft has put this together finally. You can go through these. On the startup, this is what it's prompting you. Which profile do you want to load at startup? Now that we've got Windows PowerShell version 7, I'm going to change that to the default. So if we close this down, let's save the changes first. Close it down. We're going to run terminal server admin again. And now you notice it's running PowerShell version 7. Because we went into here, into the settings, and we've changed that to PowerShell version 7. Now you can certainly launch at startup, maximized, full screen, etc. Go through these, what size you want it to be. Interactions got various formats and options that you can go through. Appearance, this is where you can actually change this to be either a light theme, a dark theme, whatever your Windows theme is. You can hide the title bars. Make sure you scroll down on all these windows, because what I didn't realize when I first ran this is there were more options down below and I forgot to scroll down. Color schemes is a great thing. You can add your own color scheme. It comes with a number of ones built in. And the color schemes I'll get into once we deal with the individual profiles, which are on the left-hand side. So Windows PowerShell, command prompt, so on and so forth. These color schemes are what you can put the color of that window into. So the background colors, the font colors, sizes, and so on. The rendering, because it now supports a GPU accelerated rendering engine, you can actually use those now to make this load even faster than what it does. And it's already pretty fast. So those are a couple more options. Under actions, these are where you can add your own shortcuts, that if you want to add a new shortcut to do something, this is what you would do. You'll go add decrease font size, etc. You can create your own shortcuts. You can delete shortcuts. You can edit existing ones. It really makes this a highly, highly customizable environment to work with. So let's have a look. So if we're in Windows PowerShell, this is the options you have for each one of the profiles that you install. So we have Windows PowerShell here. There's your command line. You can even specify what directory you want to start it in. By default, it puts it into the user profile directory. But you can certainly browse here and say, we want this one to start in the system drive, drive C. And once you save it, if we now click on this tab here and we open up Windows, there we go. we initially started in the C drive. That's where this comes in really handy. You can change the icon. That's the icon that you see in the top left-hand corner here. But you do have to go according to the naming scheme that they've got here. So make sure you keep that the same. The tab title, if you want to get rid of this administrator, etc., you can go, for example, we're in PowerShell version 5. So we can do that. Now if we open up a new tab, administrator PS5. You cannot get rid of the administrator because it has to let you know that you're actually running it in administrative mode. But the other options, you can certainly change it. If you weren't running this in administrative mode, say we're just doing that one, now you can see PowerShell 5, it doesn't have the administrator in front of it. So back into the settings here. The appearance tab, this is what it looks like by default. You can change, this is where the color schemes come in. If you want to change the color scheme to Campbell PowerShell, now if we click on save, immediately have a look at that. Your background's changed, the fonts have changed, everything's changed according to your scheme, the color scheme, and your font here. If you wanted to change this to say OCR, save, I think on the font ones, you actually have to open up and close the tab and reopen it. Yeah, you do. So make sure you open the tab or close the tab and reopen it to get some of those changes to come through. I don't mind the Cascadia font. To me, it looks decent. You can change your font size. You can view all system fonts, so then you can choose whatever you have on your system. And you can certainly go through this list. For example, if you want to do the Windows default font, you can do that one. But I find some of these look really, really awful. So do whatever you want to do on here. Change it to what suits you. But again, like I say, if you make a mistake on here, you can easily just delete that file, the JSON file, and that'll get rid of all these variables and settings and put everything back to the default so that you can undo whatever you don't like. Anyway, font weights, whether you want a bold font, extra bold, so on, retro effects. Here's where if you don't like the cursor, you can change it to an underscore, double underscore, background image. This is what I actually have used quite a bit. Each one of these, what I do is I've got a file. So the background image, and I'm in PowerShell version 5. So I've got PowerShell 5 icon. I would select that. I'll scroll down here, and I don't want it to fill the screen. So I go none, because I want it to set the size that I have the icon set at, and I want to put it in the bottom right-hand corner. So when I go save now, have a look at this. Now I have an icon in the bottom right-hand corner. So if I have the other PowerShell here, PowerShell version 7, and I want to do the same thing to it, I also have my PowerShell 7 icon, same thing, none, bottom right, save. Now if I look at that screen, so this is a good indication of which screen you're in. Of course, as you probably saw as I was flashing through these screens here, you can even change the opacity. So if I want the opacity down, there you go. Now you can lighten up the icon so it's not as stark and contrasted as what that is. So this is one of these things that you customize to any which way you want. So for example, on the command prompt, what I've actually done on my own profile is I use an entire background image. So I want that to fill the screen, centered the image. So if I open up a command prompt now, look at this. I have an image actually in the background. And if I want to just fill the screen, let's save that. Yeah, you can see it warps the image a bit, but you get the idea. Not only that, but you can even put animated GIF files as your background image, which really makes this very, very flexible. So jump back, excuse me, jump back into settings here, and you can see you've got various options. Here's another option that I use quite a bit as well. The acrylic is great, because what acrylic does is if we jump into the administrative prompt, which one did I change there? Okay, command prompt, let's remove our background image so that we can deal with the acrylic option. So we're going to enable acrylic. And we'll leave the opacity around 49-50%. Save that. Now look at that. You can sort of see through it, and that's what acrylic is. It lets you see through to your background. So depending on what you set your acrylic opacity as, say at 100%, you can't really see through it at all. But if you do it down even further, say we go down to a couple of percent here, save, and now you can see the background image sort of showing through, and that's what acrylic basically does for you. So it really is customizable. I love this because if you're dealing with all these different command prompts, you can know which screen you're currently in. So those are the options there. Under the Advanced tab, there's a couple of options here. I don't use these alias settings or anything because it really makes the font display very awkward and I don't like it. So I generally don't mess around with the Advanced tab. So here's where this program gets really, really exciting. You can add a new, first, you can add a new profile here and do whatever you want. You can duplicate a profile, then customize it to do whatever you want to do. Say you want a red background because you know you're going to do critical system changes into your Windows folder. You can have it starting up in Windows, and you can do basically it's whatever you set your mind to doing. Here's where it gets really great. All those command shortcuts that you were seeing before, you can split the screen. Not only can you split the screen, but if you press Alt and hold it down, and then you click on the download, and all the profiles that you have here. Say, for example, I wanted a Windows PowerShell. Because I was pressing Alt, it's going to split the window, and you can see my icons are all set, and that's my PowerShell 5 here, and this is PowerShell version 7. And if I press Alt and hold it down again and hit on the command prompt, it now splits it this way. And I could do the same with that side where I can press Alt and I can do the Azure. But I'm not using Azure myself at this point. So what you could do is you just press Control, Shift, and W to actually close that particular window. So if you want to close any one of these, Control, Shift, and W, and you're just left with the ones that you actually want open on your screen, which is great. Not only that, here's where it gets really, really great. Press Alt, Shift, and your arrow keys. Look at that. Now I can resize individual windows depending on which one I've currently got sized. So if I click on your PowerShell version 7, I can do that. Or if I open up, say, the command prompt here again, and it's on the bottom here and I have this selected. So Alt, Shift, there we go. We're resizing that one now. We can resize it up, down. I mean, it really does open up what you can do with the command line version now. And again, the same thing, Control, Shift, and W to close the individual windows. So let's just close that one as well. Okay. This is where it gets great. And this is why I like it. Remember I mentioned that PowerShell version 7 supports UTF-8 characters and Unicode characters. What does that really mean? Well, here's an example of what you can do. If you're writing a script and you're going to output something to the console, this is the command you would use. But with this option right here now and supporting emojis, we can now output emojis to the screen. If we were looking at the old version, version 5, you see it doesn't. That's why I say you must install PowerShell version 7 because you have options like this that are fantastic to use. Okay, maybe I just go overboard because I like doing things like that for when I'm writing scripts for clients and whatnot. To me, it's just, it adds a little bit of life to the file. Okay, so what has everybody been waiting for? And I don't just mean in terms of this video, I mean in terms of Windows, period. Everybody wants to add Linux. Well, maybe not everybody, but there's a huge portion of programmers out there that like the Linux commands. There's a command here that you can type, WSL for the Windows subsystem for Linux, and you can list all the different versions that you can actually install. So once you run that command, here are the versions, or here are the options for what you can add into this. And yes, if you install any of these Linux operating systems, you can actually run the Linux commands or the Linux programs inside of Windows, and it is super fast. So if you want to install, say for example, we want to install, which one shall we install? Yeah, let's go with the default. So we want to install Ubuntu. That's all you have to do is you type that command. It's going to go out and do everything that you need it to do. How easy is this? How great is it, especially if you're one of those guys that likes to run Linux commands? Okay, there it goes. It's installing the subsystem, downloading the Windows Subsystem for Linux kernel, installing that. And this is what I was mentioning about app support. The Windows Subsystem now supports Linux apps. Incredibly powerful. And what did I do for all of this? All I did was type that one command, which is the particular Linux version that I want to install. And if you want to install the other versions like Debian or any of those, you can certainly do. And I do believe there's a whole bunch more that are available as well. You just need the right syntax. Certainly search it out on Google and you'll see exactly what you can do. So once this is finished, I'm going to show you. Okay, changes will not be effective until you reboot the system. So you can see it hasn't added it to there. So let's quickly reboot. And I'll come back as soon as that's finished. Okay, our system is finished rebooting and it finished installing Ubuntu. So let's go back into Windows Terminal. Right-click on your Start Again, Windows Terminal Admin. Click on this drop-down, and there we can see Ubuntu has been added. And when we click on that, it takes just a couple of seconds. And there we go. We are now loaded up and running Ubuntu. And you can start typing your Linux commands and doing what you would normally do. How great is it that Microsoft has finally enhanced everything in Windows Terminal, which is basically just a shell that allows other things to be installed into so that you can have one central location to access all of these command shells. And the fact that they've added Linux to it, this is great. A couple of things I wanted to show you quickly is when you go back into the settings here, I'm not using Azure. You can certainly delete this profile, but I would recommend instead of deleting it, because maybe one day you might use it, just hide it. So when you click on that hide profile from dropdown, when you click on the dropdown now, you see the Azure has disappeared. And that makes it a little bit easier. Same thing if you're not going to use Windows PowerShell version 5, you can click on it and you can hide that profile from the dropdown. So when you click on your dropdown, you only get the ones that you really want yourself to use. It really adds something to Windows that was missing for so long. It's great that Microsoft finally went down this path. And yes, I know a lot of people don't like Windows 11, but this has added a lot to it. The Windows Subsystem for Linux was a great enhancement because you can do so much more now. Anyway, folks, I'm hoping you found this video useful, handy. I know it was a little bit drawn out, but this is something that's really excited me. When you're dealing with the ability that you now have with PowerShell version 7, with adding different Linux subsystems into Windows and being able to run Linux apps in a Windows environment and run it effectively. This is fantastic. Anyway, until the next video, folks, take care. Have yourselves a fantastic day. Ciao for now.